a young girl in Canada would essentially be bullied to death. Hello, true crimerers. This is the case of Reena Virk. Viewer discretion is advised. Before we get started, of course, first and foremost, Happy New Year to all of you true crimerers out there in the world. I hope you have a pleasant 2024. I don't know why I'm sounding like that. Anyway, before we get started into the video, of course, my name is Mike. I tell true crime stories here on YouTube. I tell 3 of them a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. I also tell short-form true crime stories over on TikTok, where I'm more known. I have about 3 million followers over there. I tell a story at least once a day on that platform. You will find the link to it in the link tree of this video below in the description of this video. And also it pops up here at some point in the beginning and at the end, so feel free to follow if you like. Also in that link tree, you will find my merch store. I sell merch. We ship all over the entire world. You can also find my email down there, and that is for if you have a case you would like me to cover, please just email me. You can send me just the name of the person, where it happened, when it happened, and I'll add it to the list. I have over 5,400 names on there now. I pick my cases at random, so I don't know when I'll cover that case that you recommend, but I will eventually at some point, so please be patient. All right, thank you. Well, let's get into today's story. Why do I always do hands at the beginning? I don't know. Let's start. Reena Virk was born on March 10th, 1983, and she was born in Victoria, Canada, which I believe is in British Columbia. Reena was the oldest child in the family. There were 3 kids. She also had a sister and a brother. Her mother, Sunan, was originally from an Indo-Canadian family. Her father, Manjit, was actually an immigrant from India. When her parents moved to Canada originally, they would convert their religion to being Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, Reena's parents were very, very devout in this, and they were very strict in their religious beliefs. Now, they, at this point, are living in Saanich, which is in British Columbia in Canada, and they lived in a little community called, I guess, View Royal, and this was a white-dominated area. It was considered to be also upper class. Reena, throughout her schooling years, especially in elementary school, is kind of when it started, she was really just kind of, you know, desperate for her peers to like her and befriend her. But starting in elementary school, Reena sadly that's when the bullying started. They bullied her of her skin color. They bullied her because of the way she looked. They bullied her because of her religious beliefs or her family's religious beliefs. This was a daily occurrence with her. These kids were relentless. I can relate. You are bullied so much to a point where you are desperate to do anything to sway your bullies, to kind of convert them to your side almost, you want to fit in with them so they stop bullying you. And that's kind of the direction Reena would start to take. And again, it's something that I can personally relate to. It's not fun. Eventually the family would move, and so Reena would be transferred to another elementary school where she was hoping, okay, a fresh start. These are new kids. But the bullying kind of also happened there. Her parents started to notice that even at a young age, Reena was just like slipping into depression. She's always appeared to be down. But when they moved to this new elementary school, the bullying was there, but it did appear that Reena had started to make a new friend, and she started to kind of become, happier because, I have a friend. But then out of nowhere, that friend just stopped talking to Reena, and the bullying became more persistent. In 1996, she was now in middle school, and she kind of saw this group of kids that she would call the cool kids. We all know them. We all gone to school, and we all know who the cool kids were. These were kids who would break the rules at school. They would skip school. They would skip their curfew. They would be caught smoking cigarettes or drinking beer or experimenting with drugs. These are kids who, at least in Reena's point of view, she said this looked like freedom to her, because while she's being bullied at school, her home life, she felt, was very strict. That their religious rules, religious beliefs were really kind of just like bringing her down. And so Reena kind of started to mingle into this group of cool kids a little bit. When her parents found out, they disapproved immensely. They did not like these kids for understandable reasons. By the end of 1996, one of these cool kids said that, hey, if you don't like your parents and you're tired of being controlled by them, just tell the police or tell someone that they're abusing you. And Reena, again, desperate to kind of look cool to them, to be part of them instead of being bullied, said, okay, I'll do that. She would actually report that her parents were physically abusing her. However, when, I guess, Child Protective Services or whoever came in to the household, they investigated and they found absolutely no evidence to show that her parents were doing that, because her parents weren't. Her parents were not and had never physically abused her in any way, shape, or form. They were strict. A lot of parents are strict, but they never abused her. And then in 1997, Reena took it a step further, and she really kind of went to a dark place. She would tell the powers that be that her father was sexually assaulting her, which again was not true. But he was actually arrested for a point and put into a jail cell because of this. And Manjeet would tell people that he believed that Reena was manipulating people to, in a sense, to get away from her parents, but also to fit in with this crowd. Because again, speaking from someone who knows about being bullied, you feel like you would do anything to get them to stop. So you need them to view you as someone like them, rebellious and cool. So for a while, Reena was then put into the care of her grandparents. And then it got to a point where she didn't like living with them either. And so she was sent back to her parents, but then she was put back with her grandparents' care. Then she went into foster care for a point. And then eventually she would go to youth homes, and she was bounced around basically the system. They were just tossing her all over the place. And this all stemmed from the fact that she had been telling these stories about sexual abuse and physical abuse, and it kind of just got carried away. And so she was really kind of just all over the place at youth homes and foster care, grandparents, her parents' house, just everywhere. And, kind of the adults in the situation really looked at this as Reena is very confused. She is trying to fit in. She wants friends, and she feels that this is the best way to do it. And I don't blame her, to be completely honest. I don't like the fact that she would accuse parents of sexual abuse or physical abuse, but what I mean is I don't blame her for doing whatever she could to try to get them to stop bullying her. She was desperate for their approval, for these kids' approval, because if she was in with the cool crowd, the bullying would probably stop. And then on November 14th, 1997, Reena would spend the night at her parents' home for an approved visit. And then these friends, the cool kid group, invited her to, a party that was going to be happening outside behind a school. So she went, and at about 10 p.m., 10:30 that night, the police arrived and they broke up this party. At 10:40 p.m., Reena calls her parents and says, hey, I'm on my way home, because her curfew was 11 p.m. And then she hung up the phone. Her parents would never hear her again. That's because the party wasn't over. She would go to, a bridge called the Craigflower Bridge. The group of teens would kind of huddle underneath the bridge, continue drinking and smoking and having a good time and partying. And Reena was there trying to fit in. But that immediately was not the case. All of a sudden, this group of 6 girls, who would later in the media be referred to as the Shoreline Six, for seemingly no reason whatsoever, started to beat Reena. The 6 people just started to wail on her, punch her, One of the girls admitted to taking a cigarette and putting it out on her forehead while they pinned her down. They were just constantly beating her. This lasted for quite some time before one of the other kids at this party said, "You need to stop, you've got to stop this." And so they stopped. The attack was unprovoked. Reena did nothing. She was literally just there. These are kids who, I guess at some point had, made fun of Reena for her skin color, for her race, for her looks. And, so it appeared that it may have stemmed from that bullying aspect, because why else would they just do this to this innocent 14-year-old girl? Reena managed to slip away and she started to run. But then two other kids who were there, they were not part of the Shoreline Six as they were referred to, they chased after Reena and they caught her and they yanked her to the ground, and then the two of them started beating her again. These two kids were 15-year-old Kelly Ellard and 16-year-old Warren Glowacki. So they're wailing on her and she's just begging for them to stop. One of them then takes Reena's head and basically shoves it underwater. It's a waterway there. And she's struggling, and they're just holding her head there underwater as hard as they can until she stops struggling. Because at that point, Reena Virk was dead. They then took off her sweater and her shoes, and they just rolled her into the water. Rolled her lifeless body into the water as if she was nothing. At 11 p.m., Reena hadn't arrived home, and her parents were concerned. They called the group home that sometimes Reena would go to. She wasn't there. They called the youth home. She wasn't there. Called the grandparents. She wasn't there. By the following morning, they would contact the Saanich police there in Canada, and the police were like, "Listen, she's got a history of being a troublesome teenager, so she clearly just ran away. We're not treating this as a missing persons case, because we know that Reena she just took off. She's just being rebellious." But within a couple of days, the school would begin to have all of these rumors just floating around about how there was this party, about how a teenage girl was beat. And some were saying, she's probably floating in the water somewhere. And it's just, and teachers heard this. Teachers heard these rumors. Other kids heard these rumors, and no one really said anything. After hearing this stuff, no one said anything. And then by November 21st, Reena is still missing, and they're still really not doing anything to look for her. They still are saying, she's a runaway. This Shoreline Six group who initiated the beating, they're sticking by each other, not going to tell on each other, and they're just, nothing happened, according to them. But one other witness who was at the party would finally go to the police and say, "I saw these two kids chase after Reena and beat her." And so a week after she goes missing, police finally open a report. And so when police got this detailed witness statement about how Ellard and Glowacki had basically beat Reena, and they believed that beat her to death and threw her in the water, those two teenagers on November 21st, 1997 were arrested. And they were actually charged with aggravated assault and murder. And then the Shoreline Six were eventually ratted out, and they were all arrested as well for assault charges. Because of Canada's young offenders list or group, the Shoreline Six had never been identified publicly because they were all youths and because they hadn't murdered anyone. On November 22nd, 1997, they get helicopters in the air. They're having people search on foot. They're trying to find Reena because at this point, they've been told she's dead. And finally, they see a body kind of just sort of floating but stuck in these reeds near the Craigflower Bridge, and they pull the body out of the water, and there is some, bloating and that kind of decomposition and whatnot. And so they're finally, after some time, able to identify the body as being 14-year-old Reena Virk. The coroner said that her cause of death was, in fact, drowning, so this would line up with what the witness stated, that they saw her being beat and then shoved underwater. But the coroner also noted that The drowning is what caused her death, but if she wasn't drowned, she would have eventually died because she had some pretty severe brain injuries, brain swelling, and injuries to her skull that were going to be fatal. She would not have survived the injuries she inflicted, either by the group of 6 or by the 2 teenagers who continued to beat her. In the beginning of 1998, 3 of the Shoreline 6 would end up pleading guilty to assault and causing bodily harm. The other 3 would actually end up going to trial under assault charges. All 6 of them were all convicted. All 6 of them received sentences and not one of them got anything longer than a year. I think it's because they couldn't really prove if it was the Shoreline 6, if those girls would have caused her death had she not been drowned, because they don't know if the skull injuries and the brain injuries were caused by them or caused by the 2 other teenagers. But they knew that those 2 teenagers are what led to and caused her drowning to die. So the Shoreline 6 basically got off because 2 other kids continued what they were doing. In April of 1999, Warren Glowatsky would go on trial. His trial was over by June, and he was found guilty of second-degree murder and also assault charges. Because he was a minor at the time of the murder, and you all know by now I hate this, but he was given a light sentence because he was a kid when he killed this girl. So he was sentenced to life in prison, but could ask for parole after 7 years. And I'm just going to cut to the chase. He was paroled. Shortly around that 7-year time span, he was let out. Reena's family actually did not protest this at all. They didn't fight it because apparently Warren had found out that he was actually, while in prison, he found out that he was actually a member of an indigenous community, and I guess he hadn't known that ahead of time. He had been doing a lot of things to change his life, and he eventually would show remorse for what he did. And so Reena's family actually ends up forgiving him and being okay with the fact that he served the minimum time he was supposed to serve, and they were okay with him being free. Me personally, I don't think I'd be able to do that. Kelly Ellard, also a youth, she then goes on trial, and she's tried as an adult. Her lawyer tried to have her tried in youth courts, but that was denied because of the severity of the crime and because of all the witnesses who saw her doing it with intent, and the fact that also she's never shown remorse. Never, not once has she ever shown remorse for what she did. In March of 2000, she is convicted of second-degree murder. She is sentenced to life in prison. Again, because she is a minor, she is given the option for parole after 7 years. But after just 18 months, her conviction is overturned. This is because they believe she was not given a fair trial for whatever reason. So she is actually out there, basically, awaiting a second trial. And about a month after she's released, she assaults and beats a 58-year-old woman. And she is once again charged with assault, and she is put back in jail because technically she's out on bail awaiting her second trial. So she's put back in jail because of what she did. June of 2004, another trial begins for her. This trial, witnesses would be called to the stand to state that Kelly Ellard was bragging about what she did. She was laughing about what she did to Reena. She was almost proud of what she did to Reena. During the trial, she would take the stand, Kelly, and she said that she believed that Reena was going to hurt her friends, and that's why she beat her. And I guess at one point she says in court, "I'm obviously going to be convicted. You've got what you want. My life is ruined." Yeah, bitch, it is. And again, she showed no remorse. But then this trial ends in a mistrial due to a jury deadlock. So once again, she has to go on trial a third time. This happens in early 2005. This time, Warren Glowatsky, I'm not sure how to say his last name, he is the main star witness for this trial. He states on the stand that it was Kelly Ellard who forced Reena's head underwater. She was the main person involved, but he could be lying. But they wanted to hear that, to see if, to help convict Kelly. Once again, she is convicted of second-degree murder, sentenced to life in prison with parole after 7 years. And then in 2008, the Supreme Court in British Columbia tossed her conviction, all because they felt that the jury was given the wrong instructions, I guess, on certain aspects from the trial. And so they ordered a fourth trial. But then it goes back to the Supreme Court of Canada, the big court, and they say, no, her conviction stands. We're not doing a fourth trial. It's done. And so it was done. She was finally just sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 7 years. By 2017, or between 2017 and 2019, Kelly Ellard is granted basically day parole, where she's allowed to leave prison during the day. And then she was eventually also given overnight parole, so she could leave during the day and stay. I don't know, it's confusing, but... And it would actually, the math would actually end up working out. She served most of her time out of a prison cell. And then by 2021 or 2022 or so, she is paroled completely. And she is out there in the world. She, I guess, had since changed her name. She's married. She has 2 kids. And I hope she fucking realizes what she did will never go away. Because once again, she has never apologized. She has never shown remorse. I hate her and I hate this. Reena's story, will become like a focal point for dealing with bullying, because a lot of people believe that she was bullied, because these are all like white kids, right? She was bullied because of her skin color and her appearance. And so and that's what most of the bullying came from elementary school, middle school. And so it prompted a conversation, at least, a nationwide in Canada conversation about bullying and racism and whatnot. But I think Reena's family is hoping that this is just a sad lesson for, I don't know, bullying is a tough topic for me, but it's never worth it. Folks, don't do it. Don't ruin someone's life if you are upset with who you are. Now people are going to cyberbullying and bullying kids over the internet. It hasn't stopped. It hasn't stopped. Kids are still ending their lives because of bullying. Kids are bullied to death still all the time. And I'm happy I got out of it alive. And I just wish people like Reena would have also gotten out alive. Reena was just trying to fit in. She was desperate to fit in. She was desperate to make it stop. She made some bad choices because of it. And, in the end, I don't like how she accused, sexual assault and assault by her parents. But in the end, I understand the motivation behind it. I understand the reasons. I get it on a personal level. I get it. Just if you're being bullied, just please tell someone. Just tell someone. Tell anyone. Tell your parents. Tell a guidance counselor, and make them believe it. If you have to call a hotline or tell someone privately, tell a doctor, someone that it's happening, and maybe it can get stopped. I don't know if Reena got justice, really, because the kids who started this whole beating, they just got a little slap on the wrist and says, I know, now you behave. And the 2 people responsible for ending her life, they served a grand total of 14, 15 years between the 2 of them combined for killing her because they were kids who did it. They were old enough to know what they were doing, old enough to know to dump her in the water so that no one would find her. They were old enough, they knew what they were doing. They're adults at that point. Treat them as adults. I'm so tired of these kids being able to kill someone and get away with it, essentially, because they were kids when they did it. I don't personally care if, we can change, or they can learn from their mistakes. I don't care. They killed a person knowingly, and they did it with intent. They did it to kill her. They shoved her head underwater after beating her. That's an adult decision, and so it should be treated as such. I can just only hope that those 2 monsters have somehow found a way to change, and also those 6 other little twats. I hope they found some way to change as well. So in the end, I don't feel like Reena Virk truly got the justice she deserved, but at least in some way, shape, or form, she did get some level of justice. But that is it for this case. True crime, a Rooney Dooney, Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, please subscribe to the channel if you like true crime. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for me is when I make videos here. I also tell daily stories over on TikTok. The link is in the link tree in the description below. I sell merch, recommended case to my email listed below. Yada yada, Mickey yada pants. And that is it for this video. So, yeah. As usual, the way I end every video, I am going to let you guys watch me pick every single piece of dog hair off of my shirt individually. Ready? Go. 1. Damn it. Stuck. Dang it. Come on. Dagnabbit. 2. Oh, come on. Son of a bitch. There's gotta be an easier way to do this. They need to invent an easier way to do this. 3. God blast it. Come on. Come on, you stubborn little... Come on. Come on. 4. We got about 30,000 more to go.